Nehemiah was a man of action and prayer. He loved God and his people. God chose Nehemiah to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. This was a huge task, but Nehemiah trusted God. He led the people with courage and determination. After the walls were finished, Nehemiah returned to his duties in Persia. But his heart remained with the people in Jerusalem. He prayed for them and longed to see them thrive. Years later, Nehemiah returned to Jerusalem. He was saddened by what he found. The people had forgotten God's laws. They were living in disobedience and compromise. Nehemiah was determined to lead the people back to God. He knew that true strength and prosperity came from following God's ways. Upon his return, Nehemiah discovered a disheartening situation. Eliashib, the high priest, had allowed Tobiah, an Ammonite enemy of God, to live within the temple courts. This was a grave offense, as Tobiah had consistently opposed the work of God and sought to undermine Nehemiah's efforts. This act of compromise had serious implications. It signaled a disregard for the sanctity of the temple, a place dedicated solely for the worship of God. Allowing someone hostile to God's people to reside within this sacred space was a blatant violation of God's law. Nehemiah was deeply troubled by this discovery. He recognized that such compromise opened the door for further spiritual decline. The people's hearts were being led astray, and their commitment to God was waning. Nehemiah took immediate action to address the situation. He confronted Eliashib and rebuked him for allowing Tobiah to reside in the temple. He then ordered that Tobiah's belongings be removed and the chambers cleansed. Nehemiah's actions were decisive and bold. He understood the gravity of the situation and refused to tolerate such blatant disregard for God's holiness. His actions were a testament to his unwavering commitment to God's law and his deep concern for the spiritual well-being of his people. The cleansing of the temple served as a powerful symbol of repentance and restoration. It was a tangible reminder that God's presence dwelled in their midst and that they were called to live lives set apart for His glory. Nehemiah observed that the Sabbath was being neglected. The people were engaging in trade and work on this holy day, disregarding God's commandment to rest. This disregard for the Sabbath was a symptom of their spiritual decline, indicating a weakening of their commitment to God's commands. Nehemiah took swift action to address this issue. He rebuked the nobles and officials for their disregard of the Sabbath and reminded them of God's clear instructions. He ordered the city gates to be closed at dusk on Friday, preventing merchants from entering and conducting business. Nehemiah's actions were met with resistance from those who profited from Sabbath trading. However, he remained firm in his resolve, knowing that honoring the Sabbath was essential for the spiritual health of the nation. Section 5. The Levites restored, servants in the house of the Lord. Nehemiah discovered that the Levites, who were responsible for the temple service, had been neglected. They were forced to work their fields to support themselves, as the people were not bringing their tithes and offerings to the temple. This neglect hindered the Levites from fulfilling their sacred duties. Nehemiah immediately addressed this issue. He reminded the people of their obligation to support the Levites and commanded them to bring their tithes and offerings to the temple. He reinstated the Levites in their proper roles, ensuring that the temple service continued without hindrance. Nehemiah's actions demonstrated his deep respect for the priesthood and his commitment to upholding the proper worship of God. He understood that the spiritual health of the nation depended on the faithful service of the Levites. Section 6. Confronting intermarriage, protecting the covenant. One of the most disheartening discoveries Nehemiah made was the prevalence of intermarriage between the Israelites and the surrounding pagan nations. This practice was strictly forbidden by God, as it led to idolatry and spiritual corruption. Nehemiah was deeply grieved by this discovery. He understood that intermarriage posed a significant threat to the spiritual identity and covenant faithfulness of God's people. He knew that such unions often led to the adoption of foreign gods and the erosion of their commitment to Yahweh. With righteous anger, Nehemiah confronted those who had intermarried. He rebuked them sharply, reminding them of the disastrous consequences of such actions in Israel's history. He appealed to their sense of identity and their responsibility to preserve the purity of their faith. Section 7. Nehemiah's bold actions, a leader's courage. Nehemiah didn't just talk, he acted. He made those who had married foreign women promise to separate from their wives. He even pulled out some of their hair and made them swear before God. These were strong actions, but Nehemiah knew they were necessary. He was willing to be unpopular to protect his people. He understood that compromise with sin would lead to spiritual disaster. Nehemiah's courage and decisiveness were remarkable. He didn't shy away from difficult decisions, even when they were met with resistance. He understood that true leadership involved making tough choices for the good of the people, even if it meant personal sacrifice. Section 8. Lessons from Nehemiah. Standing firm in faith. Nehemiah's story teaches us valuable lessons about leadership and faithfulness. He reminds us that true leaders are not afraid to stand up for what is right, even when it's difficult. Nehemiah's life challenges us to examine our own lives. Are we willing to stand up for God's truth even when it's unpopular? Are we willing to make sacrifices to honor God and protect His people? Like Nehemiah, we are called to be people of action and prayer. We are called to be salt and light in a world that desperately needs God's truth. We are called to stand firm in our faith even when surrounded by compromise and opposition. Section 9. A legacy of faithfulness. Nehemiah's enduring impact. Nehemiah's reforms had a profound impact on the people of Israel. They were reminded of God's holiness and their responsibility to live according to His covenant. His leadership brought about a spiritual renewal, strengthening their commitment to God and His ways. Nehemiah's story continues to inspire us today. He stands as a shining example of a leader who was fully committed to God and His purposes. His life challenges us to live lives of integrity, courage, and unwavering faith. As we face the challenges of our own time, let us remember the example of Nehemiah. Let us be people of prayer, action, and unwavering commitment to God's truth. Let us stand firm in our faith, knowing that God is with us, and let us strive to make a difference for His glory.